This is the meeting of the Athens Board of Zoning Appeals. The time is 7:01 p.m. and the date is August 14, 2018. At this point, I will call the meeting to order. The board consists of 5 members and 2 alternates, the alternates taking full part in the discussion and becoming a voting member in the absence of a member or when a member abstains for conflict of interest. Present tonight are members Mr. Ed Baum, Ms. Lisa Carson, Mr. John Godekanst, Ms. Kay Towsley, and alternate Ms. Jessica Koplowitz. I am John Golsey, the chair. Also present are zoning administrator Mr. Rick Sorois and secretary Mr. Paul Eschenbacher. At this time, I invite you to view a pre-recorded video on the rules and procedures of the board.
The Athens Board of Zoning Appeals operates according to the following procedure. The chair will name and describe the case. The zoning administrator or secretary will state the basis of the objection and any applicable facts or conditions pertaining to the case. The appellant or their representative will give reason why the appeal should be viewed favorably. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the request will be heard. Anyone wishing to speak in general comment will be heard. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition will be heard. If necessary, the appellant or their representative will offer concluding, summary, or rebuttal remarks. Testimony from the floor shall be closed. The board will deliberate and render a decision. According to Athens City Code, Section 23.07.03b, the board has power to grant variances from the strict application of the code, provided the variance will not be contrary to the public interest, the spirit of the code is observed, public safety and welfare are secured, and substantial justice is done. According to Athens City Code, Section 23.07.10c, variances from the code shall not be granted unless the board makes specific findings of fact based directly on the particular evidence presented to it, that the standards and conditions imposed in this title, if applicable, have been met by the applicant. Exceptional circumstances. There are exceptional or extraordinary circumstances or conditions applying to the property in question or to the intended use of the property that do not apply generally to other properties or classes or uses in the same zone. Practical difficulty and undue hardship. Because of exceptional or extraordinary circumstances or conditions pertaining to a specific piece of property, a literal enforcement of these regulations will result in practical difficulty or undue hardship that is unnecessary to the achievement of public purposes. Preservation of equal property rights. Literal interpretation of these regulations would deprive the appellant of rights commonly enjoyed by others in the same zone and the same vicinity, while a granting of the requested variance will not confer on the applicant any special privilege that is denied to other properties in the same zone and the same vicinity. Minimum variance. The variance granted is the minimum variance required to make possible the reasonable use of the property. Absence of detriment. The authorizing of such variance will not be of substantial detriment to adjacent property and will not materially impair the purpose of the zoning code or the public interest. Not of a general nature. The condition or situation of the specific piece of property or the intended use of said property for which variance is sought, one or the other or in combination, is not of so general or recurrent a nature as to make reasonably practicable the formulation of a general regulation for such condition or situation. Any person, resident, or officer, department, or appointed body of the City of Athens, aggrieved by a decision of the board, may petition the Athens County Court of Common Pleas concerning the illegality of the decision. Such petition must be filed within 30 days after the mailing of the decision of the board to the applicant. Thank you.
There are 4 cases on tonight's agenda, and they will be heard in the following order. The first case would be 310 West Union Street. The second case would be 7 North Congress Street. followed by 260.5 East State Street, and the last case would be 220 East State Street. The board is required to take testimony under oath. Would anyone wishing to speak concerning any item on the agenda please stand? Do you swear or affirm that any testimony you will present to the board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Please be seated. Thank you. Case number 1 is case 18-18V, the property at 310 West Union Street. Zone is B3, and Expressive Graphics is the appellant. The appellant is requesting a variance from ACC 230313I1I to allow a wall-mounted sign with a left side setback of 30 feet or 30 inches, where 50 inches is the minimum requirement. Unless you have any comment, we're going to ask the appellant.
Well, I just wanted to bring up, I think we talked about this during or after a meeting a couple months ago. This is the part of the sign ordinance where a wall sign has to be set back a minimum distance from the edge of the building, from both edges of the building. The formula they use is 10% of the width of the building. As I brought up a couple months ago, the way it's written, it's obviously set up for buildings that abut other buildings, so that the signs are not on top of each other. But I don't think that part of the sign ordinance takes into consideration buildings that are on their own, separate. So the idea that a sign would be butting up against the edge of the building there is not going to influence or do anything to any other nearby building.
Yeah, okay. I saw a picture that the potentially could be two signs for two different businesses.
That's correct.
Are you trying to keep them like equal size, or you
That's
don't?
correct.
Okay.
Equal size and equal distance.
Alrighty, would the appellant please come to the podium, and any person who comes to the podium, please sign your name. Also state your name and address for the record.
My name is Robin Stone King. My address is 924 Cadillac Street, Zanesville, Ohio, and I'm here on behalf of Expressive Graphics.
Would you like to add anything? Say anything?
A client has requested that you do allow the variance of the 30 inches from the setback. And I also wanted to bring up something else. They had asked me. There is another client that is going in that same building, and she is also going to be on the attendance panel, and she has requested that as well. And I do have her information that I brought with me this evening.
Okay. Any questions for the appellant?
No.
No, I'm asking the board if they have any questions for the. Did the board have any questions for the code office? No? Okay, you may be seated for now. I don't have any questions, and then let's see. Is there anyone here wishing to speak in favor of this variance? Anyone wishing to speak in general commentary or in opposition? Okay, we're going to close the discussions from the floor. And unless there's any discussion, would somebody please make a motion?
I move to request a variance from ACC 23.03.13 I1I to allow a wall-mounted sign with left side setback of 30 inches, where 50 inches is the minimum requirement.
Second.
To what property?
310 West Union Street, thank you. Zone B3.
Mr. Eschenbacher, would you please remind us, all of us, we may have forgotten that, for making a motion, what do we need to do from
I just suggested that probably the only thing that needs to be mentioned is the address.
the address? Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. So we're just going to go with the address. Thank you.
Excuse me, if I may, that this variance is just for the sign that, on the one side. We have
Right.
not received an application for the other
No, we
side.
don't, yeah, we're not going to discuss that.
All right.
Just whatever is
Just wanted to
here.
make it clear.
Right. Okay, going through the findings, is there any exceptional circumstances here?
Yeah, the building houses two side-by-side tenants. It's not the kind of, as Mr. Eschenbacher explained, it's signs
Okay.
for one building, not buildings abutting each other.
Okay, and what is the difficulty? What is the practical difficulty? Or is there a practical difficulty here?
There's a space, a nice recessed space for the signs already, and if they
Right
can't
above the
use
door.
it, it's difficult.
Okay. Preservation of equal property rights.
Yes.
Is this the minimum variance?
Yes.
Yes. Absence of detriment is not going to cause any major issues. And not of a general nature. All in favor of this variance, please raise your hand.
Do I vote? I don't
We
vote.
got 5-0, and the lady at the end is not voting. She's an alternate member, so. Okay. Congratulations. Let's go to case number 2. Case 18-19V, the property at 7 North Congress Street. The zone is R3. And we have Michael Kreiders, RVC Architects is the appellant. The appellant is requesting a conditional use permit under ACC 230403C3 for a residential healthcare facility, and a variance from ACC 2310 Table A, a schedule of bulk controls, to allow an addition to a building with a rear setback of 15 feet, 2.5 inches, where 40 feet is the minimum requirement. So, Mr. Eschenbacher, do we need to do this twice? One for the...
There's a slightly different set of findings for the conditional use than
Okay.
there is, so when the time comes, I'll
Okay.
explain what they are.
Okay, great. Anything else you want to add? No? Any questions for the...
Yes, just a question. We don't need to consider anything about parking. There's something in the
I
document.
think that's something probably the appellant can address when he gets up there.
Okay, that it's not written into the variance
No.
request as written.
Yeah, I actually wasn't going to discuss it because it's not in our agenda, so, but we'll see what they have to say. It's not a part of it. Would the appellant please come to the podium and state your name and address?
My name is Mike Carruthers, and today we'll be talking about the requesting a variance for a rear setback where 40 feet is required. What they want to do is essentially extend their kitchen, and where they're looking to extend it, it's hidden pretty well behind landscape and shrubbery. We considered going out to the side, but because of the ADA ramp and the topography, we really can't go out to the side. It's somewhat impractical to go out the front, and then the other side we simply can't go that way. So the most logical way is to go in the back. And we're actually looking at a space that's kind of inset a little bit behind a retaining wall. So it really is hidden in the back. It would have very minimal impact. and it's not going to be seen from the street, or it shouldn't bother any of the neighbors. The other thing I did want to bring up was the parking. With the deed restriction, my understanding based on their mortgage, they aren't able to do a deed restriction, but what they would like to do instead is possibly do a, say, a 20-year lease, because, and in lieu of doing a deed restriction. That would still meet the parking requirements, but it wouldn't create an issue for the mortgage.
Okay, any questions for the appellant?
How wide is that extension or the addition? It can't tell from the drawing.
It says 10 by 11, I guess.
10 by 11?
Yeah.
Is it?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, 110 square feet.
So I'm just, how wide is the addition? And just how farther back will the house go?
It's going to be about 5 feet.
5 feet?
5 or 6 feet. It's not very.
It didn't look very big, but I just wondered.
Yeah.
So would this require another employee or two?
What it'll do is it'll help better serve. The group actually helps people who have mental illness, and by expanding, this will actually help them better serve people with mental illnesses. Right now, the kitchen's a little bit cramped, and it just needs to expand a little bit.
Is this going to be connected in any way to that shed which is sitting outside?
No. My intent is to not touch the shed.
Okay. And the shed would be an accessory building, so it would not require the setbacks.
That's my understanding now.
Okay, any other questions for the appellant? Okay, you may be seated for now, and if we need to call you back, we will. Is there anyone here to speak in favor of the request? Okay, please come to the podium. And I believe you did swear to tell the truth and nothing the truth, but okay.
My home address on here?
Pardon
Do you
me?
need my home address on here?
No, it's okay for
Okay.
now. We'll figure out something.
Okay, so my name's Mary Knier, and did you need the address?
Yes, address.
Like my home address?
Somewhere we can find you.
Okay. 7 North Congress Street, Athens, Ohio. I'm the executive director of The Gathering Place. The Gathering Place has been in Athens since 1976 at that location at 7 North Congress Street. In 1986, we actually purchased that property with revenue from the State Department of Mental Health. And we have been recently putting a lot of funds into just rehabbing and making the facility, keeping the facility up. It's a beautiful house. It's a really sound structure. It's just a beautiful Victorian house. But we've recently put $100,000 into our phase 1 project, new HVAC system, updated electrical work, new hardwood flooring. We've renovated 2 bathrooms recently. And so this is sort of phase 2 of using the facility to its best use. We provide 4 healthy meals per week for the clients that come to the, it's not residential, so I don't know if that was a confusion. I think that's on the agenda, but it's not a residential facility, it's a drop-in center. We're open 365 days a year. We do holiday meals, Christmas, Thanksgiving, etc. And so our kitchen is just a really important hub, teaching healthy meal preparation skills, working with our members on making healthy food choices. For instance, in the summer we have gardening, and we've recently been making salsa and tomato sauce and preserving that for the winter time. And so I think this is a really wonderful reason to grant a variance for this particular code. I think that's all I have to say, but.
Any questions for the appellant? You may be seated for now, thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on behalf of this variance? We have a real nice narrative from RBC that they have stated their case. There is a letter from Ms. Mary Neisser, Executive Director of Alcohol, Drug Addiction and Mental Health Service Board, that they have granted a $66,740 for the expansion of the facility, and a very detailed information of the grant. Is there anyone wishing to speak in general? Or in general, okay?
My name is Ginger Schmallenberg, and I'll give the address of 7 North Congress. I am the Resource and Development Director for the Gathering Place. I wanted to clarify a little bit about the parking, the confusion about that. We have recently purchased the parking lot next to the Gathering Place, and we rented spaces for years and years and years. And we also purchased the house next to it, 34 West Washington. And by purchasing that, we actually got a grant, capital funds from the Ohio Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services. And so that's in one deed. And so we cannot separate the deed of any of those parking spots, even though we rent them from ourselves. So we own both properties and the parking lot. We bought the property because we were going to lose the parking lot if it was sold, and that would be really the detriment of our programming. And so we plan on using parking. So I just wanted to clear that up a little bit, why it's not like we're refusing to do parking. We always have to have parking. So, okay, I just want to say that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Now, is there anyone wishing to speak in opposition of this variance? Okay, we're going to close the discussion from the floor. And I have a little bit of I guess I distributed this to the members once before. Conditionally permitted uses. The BZA may authorize the issuance of a conditional use permit in accordance with the following provisions. And which one do I need to read? All of them?
1, 2, well, you can go through them, 1, 2, 3A, 3B, and 3C.
Okay. It says that the conditional uses for which a permit is issued are permitted in the zone.
Yes. 230403 C3, which has to do with conditionally permitted uses in this zone.
Okay.
Number 3 is residential healthcare facility. Residential healthcare facilities for persons with disabilities, provided that such facilities comply with all federal, state, and local laws and regulations.
Okay,
and even though she said it's not residential, that's the...
But I thought it would be under clinic maybe, right? The next one, clinic?
Well, I guess you could. I mean, yeah, you could give it for the clinic, and it would be the same thing.
Yeah. Okay. Number 2, each conditional use is considered as an individual case, and this is certainly a different case. The BZA shall find the case conforms to the specific requirements enumerated in each section and also these standards. The conditional use complies with all applicable city regulations.
Except for the rear setback.
Yeah,
and they
okay.
Discuss that.
The conditional use will be of such location, size, and character that it will generally be in harmony with the appropriate and orderly development of the zone. It will not be detrimental to the orderly development of the adjacent properties, nor inconsistent with the city comprehensive plan. I don't think.
Well, the property on one side is their own parking lot.
Yeah.
The property on the other side, they are not expanding in that direction.
Yeah. And the ingress and egress from the parking area is so designed as to cause minimum interference. I don't think there should be any problem with that.
No, that's one entrance and exit.
Right. Okay, that takes care of that one. So do we need to vote separately or just all in? Just vote on this first.
Probably have to vote on the two.
I think you have to vote on the conditional use separate first.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, would you like to?
I'll make a motion. I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals grant a variance to the property at 7 North Congress Street.
Conditional use?
Conditional use under ACC 2304-03C3 for a residential healthcare facility.
Oh, well, do you want to do healthcare facility or clinic?
Well, I'm just reading what it says here.
Well, I mean, I guess you could ask them if they mind having a conditional use for a clinic instead of a residential healthcare facility.
Okay.
I would say that the nature of their business is more of a maybe clinic. People come and they leave. They're not staying because they didn't want to be classified as a residence.
Okay.
And a healthcare facility doesn't necessarily mean that they stay.
Well, it has the
Well,
word
but
residential.
clinics, the definition of clinic specifically says where patients are not usually lodged overnight.
Yeah.
So, but when you read that, instead of the last number being 3, it should be 4 for clinic.
Okay.
So,
I'll accept that.
okay.
Okay, do we have a second?
A second.
Okay. All members in favor of granting the conditional use permit, please raise your hand. Okay, you got that part. And do we have a motion for the variance?
Yes. I move that the board grant a variance to the property at 7 North Congress Street from ACC 2310 Table A, Schedule of Bulk Controls, to allow an addition to a building with a rear setback of 15 feet, 2 1/2 inches, where 40 feet is the minimum requirement.
Second.
Okay, very good. Exceptional circumstances. And there are exceptional or extraordinary circumstances or conditions applying to the property in question or to the intended use of the property that do not apply generally to other properties or classes or uses in the same zone.
It's exceptional just in its nature of taking care of people. So
Now, we're, again, talking about the variance of the rear setback. I don't think it's going to have any effect. It's just a small addition. Practical difficulty and undue hardship. Apparently, they need a bigger kitchen. They need the extension. And it's a lovely place. It's actually a really nice piece of property in there and perfect for what they're doing. Is this the minimum variance?
Yes.
Yes. Absence of detriment, I don't think there's any issue in there, and not of a general nature.
No.
All in favor of this variance, please raise your hand. So you have 5-0. Case number 3 is case 18-20V. The property is at 260.5 East State Street. Zone is B1. Appellant is requesting a variance from ACC 2310 Table A, Schedule of Bulk Controls, to allow a duplex with lot size of 5,464 square feet, where 7,000 square feet is the minimum requirement. A right setback of 7 feet, where 8 feet is the minimum requirement, and the front yard setback of 17 feet, where 25 feet is the minimum requirement. And I have known Ms. Jeffers for many, many years, so I'm not going to be voting on this particular case. So Ms. Jessica Koplowitz, would you please be a voting member on this one? Okay. Anything from the code office?
Just that basically what they're doing is changing the building to a duplex. They aren't changing the footprint. All these things they need variances for, the size of the lot, the setback, and the such are already existing.
Okay.
It's just the change of use that means that they'd have to try to get it conforming.
Okay.
I do have a question when we get to it.
Go ahead.
I do have a question for the administrators. It says residence use, any use permitted and as regulated in the residential district adjoining the B1 zone. Adjoining the B1 zone is an R1, which does not allow duplexes.
But there's also now an R3 that abuts it, because where the flower shop was on the corner, they got specific zoning. Part of it's R1 and part of it's R3.
Okay, that was it. Okay,
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions for the code office? Would Ms. Jeffers please come to the podium and state your name and address for the record?
My name is Tina Jeffers, 8100 Williams.
Speak up a little bit.
I'm sorry. My name is Tina Jeffers, 8100 Williams Road, Athens, Ohio.
You can state your case.
Okay.
And why you need the variance.
I own 260 and 260 and a half East 8th Street, and 260 is a fairly good-sized lot. This was a little cove behind it. It's on a very quiet street. I want to keep it that way. I don't want to change anything. I haven't changed anything in the house other than there was a rickety old stairwell that I almost fell down myself. The people, when I bought the property, the people wanted to stay in the house, and I just left it as it is. But since I've asked them to move, I'm cleaning it up and redoing it, and I just want to make something nice and equitable for the neighborhood. I'm only asking for, 2 people up and 1 person down. I don't want to make hardships on anyone. I fixed a fence. There was a wall that was breaking down. I fixed that wall, and then I fixed another wall because it was falling apart too. So I have plenty of parking. I have 4 spots. Should only need 3, but there's plenty there, and I may even be able to get more, but right now I don't need it. Only for extra. That's because I feel that I don't want to cause a hardship on anybody. Mm-hmm. But when I took that stairwell out, it did make it difficult. It would cost money to put another one in, but I think that it would be easier with only 3 people in that unit. It would just serve the community better.
And there is not a way to go from one unit to the other unit
not
internally,
right now.
So that is going to limit your for having a single location. Okay. Anything else?
Well, 260 has quite a bit of ground and lot with it, so it isn't like it. And these 2 houses have been there. The one has been there since early 1900s. It's a beautiful old Victorian. It needs some work on the outside, but the inside I've completely. I didn't move any walls. I didn't move anything. I just cleaned things up and fixed things. And so it's just a really nice old house. And this one is nice now, too.
Any questions for the appellant?
So was the former tenant living in both up and down, or were they just using the bottom for storage?
They were using that stairwell, but it was one of those curly ones that was very, like I said, I was having to hold on both sides, and it was wiggling, and it was really dangerous. I'm surprised, that no one was hurt on it.
Any other questions? You may be seated for now. And is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of this variance? So you all must be for the fourth case, huh? Anyone in general commentary or opposition? Okay, we're going to close the discussions from the floor. Unless there is any discussions on the board, would someone please make a motion?
I don't need to make a motion.
Okay. I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals grant a variance for the property at 260.5 East State Street from ACC 2310 Table as Scheduled Bulk Controls to allow duplex with a lot size of 5,464 square feet where 7,000 square feet is the minimum requirement, a right setback of 7 feet where 8 feet is the minimum requirement, and a front yard setback of 17 feet where 25 feet is the minimum requirement.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Ms. Carson, second. What is exceptional circumstances?
Well, I think one of the things that we always run into is we have a lot size that's smaller than the standard, and so that creates all kinds of difficulties for property to try to meet the zone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and practical difficulty and undue hardship, that's the reason for that. Preservation of equal property rights. Satisfied?
Given that it's B1 zone, yes.
Okay. Yeah. Is this the minimum variance?
Yes.
Absence of detriment?
None.
And is this of a nature of general nature?
No.
Not.
Again, I'm not going to be voting, so Jessica, you will be voting. All in favor of this variance, please raise your hand. Okay, you have the variance 5-0. And see if we can finish this before 8 o'clock.
If I may real quick, just make a comment. Those who have applied and have received the variance need to come back to the office and submit a new application, which then this variance will be attached to it. I just wanted to make sure everyone was clear on that. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks. We should remember to make that comment in every case, I guess, in the future. Case number 4 is 18-21V. The property at 220 East Estate Street, zone is R1. Appellant is requesting a variance from ACC 230401 to allow a bed and breakfast in an R1 zone where such use is not permitted, and from ACC 2310 Table B off-street parking requirements to allow a bed and breakfast with 2 parking spaces where 5 parking spaces are the minimum requirement. Whew. The code office, I guess in the past, sometimes we have mentioned that if there is the main entrance to the city, such as maybe Richland Avenue, bed and breakfast is not allowed, but this is not the case in here, right?
It is the case.
State Street. Yeah, it is.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. Do you have any questions for the board, for the code office? Would the appellant please come to the podium and state your name and address?
My name is Davis Kramer. I'm representing my family at 220 East State Street. I also brought some support documents. I was told I was able to bring it to the meeting, so is now a good time to bring it up to you guys?
Yeah, could you please speak louder a little bit?
Sure.
Yeah, for those of us who are a little older.
No, I speak on his behalf, so.
Thank you. He's not older.
Okay, I'm going to pass it from there, so there's only one copy.
Okay. We got the forms. That's what we got.
Okay, go ahead.
I also have sort of a statement to read, because I know this is a very touchy subject, the B&B and the R1, so just bear with me, please. But thank you all for going through my documents. I know it was pretty extensive, everything I sent over to you guys. I hope it was helpful in kind of understanding the vision that, you know, we have and the vision that my family has talked about for about 10 years. But when Grace Foster Hunter and her husband George were selling their house at 220 East State Street in 1997, they insisted on being present at every showing. When someone would be interested in buying, they would ask what they envisioned it for. And several of the people interested expressed that they would turn it into a part-time rental. The Hunters wanted to see their home taken care of and wouldn't sell to anyone who wanted to make it a student rental. Our family purchased the house in 1998. In 2006, my parents put it on the market in an attempt to downsize and ran into similar problems that the Hunters experienced. People were really interested in the house, but they wanted to rent it. One couple even said they wanted to buy it and let their 3 sons who were going to OU live in it. In good conscience, my parents didn't sell to them. So in the documents that I brought with me today, you can see I've spoken with several of my closest State Street and Elmwood neighbors about what we would like to do with our home. I spent at least an hour with each of them, walking them through the details of our vision and answering the questions that each of them had. The biggest concerns I heard were around parking, obviously, and how we intend to vet our guests and how we'll comply with the noise ordinance. As I detailed in my supporting documents to you guys, we plan to add more parking to the top of the property. We've got a pretty large yard, so we're able to accommodate that. But this will allow us to keep the green space of the side yard or the second lot that we have, and also able to group all of the parking together. It will be a requirement that anyone who wishes to stay in our home will provide a detailed description of who they are, who the people in their party are, and why they're in town. This is pretty standard. I stay at a lot of bed and breakfasts, and that's pretty standard of the people that I'm asking to stay at their home, just detailing exactly who's in my group and what we're doing there. We would also like to uphold an age requirement of at least 25 years old, similar to how car rental companies handle it. Since our home is a historic property, there will be a level of education required when people arrive. By greeting guests at the door, we can ensure that they understand not only how to operate some of the quirks of an older house, but also give us a chance to reinforce our seriousness about noise and about how this is a no-party house whatsoever. This is non-negotiable, and it'll be in the contract with them as well. There was another concern from our closest neighbor about the fact we wouldn't be on the premises while guests were at the house. While we will be living there during the week, on weekends we want to give our guests full range of the home without us being there. This is a more modern approach to a bed and breakfast, and we feel that with careful vetting and having cameras surrounding the property, as well as having a property manager in town to immediately address anything that comes up, we're able to grant this trust to our guests. Our neighbors' concerns are all valid. They're the same concerns we have as fellow East Side residents. We don't want to be a hindrance to our neighbors at all. We want this to be something that really contributes to the betterment of Athens and to our neighborhood community. I think the final point I'd like to make on this proposal is that nobody will care more about this at 220 East State Street than we will. We're only the second owners, so we know the history and the stories, and we're completely committed to protecting that historic integrity. Our goal is to be open and transparent, and that's why we've taken the time to talk to as many people as we possibly can, and why we're coming to you first. And we have conditions that we're holding ourselves to, including coming back and representing to you all maybe after a year to gauge feelings and expectations, and we really welcome additional thoughts from you all. And yeah, this is a vision we've shared as a family for about 10 years. We feel this is the greatest use of our home, not only in our historical preservation efforts, but something that supports our local community. And we really want to work to find solutions that work not just for us, but for our neighbors and everyone in Athens.
So the way I understand, there are 5 rooms or 5 units of bedrooms that you could possibly at some point be renting to 5 individuals, I mean different individuals, right?
Well, we only want to rent 3 bedrooms on the second floor, and you know, having the third floor, there's another full bath on the third floor, so we think that that would be...
Well, because the reason for 5 parking
Right.
is for 1 for each.
Right, yes.
Okay.
I mean, we won't have any sleeping accommodations on the third floor, and if it makes everyone feel we can lock the third floor completely, since it's a separate floor. It really isn't a house to have, you know, packed to the brims with people. We're trying to kind of make it an elevated experience, so looking at just the 3 bedrooms, you know, we're not trying to pack it with as many people as possible, because it isn't that house.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Have you talked to City Council about allowing bed and breakfast on East State Street?
I've spoken with some city council members. I mean, I think it was previously in the code that you could have a bed and breakfast on a major facing federal highway, including East State Street. But I think that was removed with the rewrite of the bed and breakfast code recently. But I mean, that's, you know, everyone I talk to feels it's a great idea, but it's an R1, so it's not allowed.
I thought I heard something you mentioned about the parking. So did you say you're going to add, how many parking spaces do you have right now?
We have 2.
2. So did you mention something about adding some?
Yes. So up at, and I think it's in one of the documents I sent you guys, but
Yeah, that's what I just heard you saying, that some addition, but I didn't get the whole thing.
Right, yeah, so on the third, the backyard is terraced, so on the third terrace, we are going to bring the fence in and take out some of that dirt and lay gravel. We're trying to add 1 additional spot. I think we could have 2 there. From my measurements, we can have 2 additional spots up at the top of the property, so it would be right next to the 2-car garage. So all the parking would be in the same place at the top of the property, and it wouldn't... We were approved for a curb cut 10 years ago to put a driveway in the second lot or the side yard of our house. I'd really like... that would be like my last resort, just because I think having open green space is more valuable.
Well, the reason I'm saying this is if you are willing to add extra parking, and also if you are willing to reduce the number of possible bedrooms to 3, then we could maybe reward the variance a little bit, make it more, make it easier on you and us. So that's what I'm trying to figure out.
Right, yeah, I might not have been clear in that when I first submitted the application, exactly how that works, because I met with the inspector who originally wrote that, and you know, said we will add parking, and you know, we're only looking at the 3 bedrooms. We can lock the third floor, or we can just ensure that there are no beds up there, and anyone can stop in at any time to check up on that if that's what you'd like to do.
Okay, thank you. Questions? You may be seated for now. You probably may call you again. Is there anyone wishing to speak in favor of the request? Please come to the podium.
My name is Joyce Mullins. I live at 47 Briarwood Drive. I have been a friend and supporter of the Kramers for many, many years. And I'm just going to read to you what I wrote in support of this effort. The Foster House Bed and Breakfast proposal is not only well written, but has a thoughtful and pre-planned backbone. As a longtime resident of Athens, growing up in this lovely small city and raising a family here, I feel the need to express a growing concern. It is the growth of student rentals in our family neighborhoods. As we know, there seems to be little oversight of the upkeep and daily maintenance of these previously owned family dwellings. The Kramers' proposal for a bed and breakfast is an alternative that is logical, somewhat due to its location. It also provides the Near East End a model for preserving the history of our beautiful neighborhoods. As a homeowner, I have been recently presented with a situation where a house nearby was sold as a rental. It's my opinion that weekend guests who, as stated in the proposal, would be expected to respect the home and its neighbors would be preferable to the possibility of renters who may not have my same homeowner values. This is evidenced throughout Athens, where family homes turned rentals are not well maintained. The Kramer family has been excellent keepers of this beautiful and historic home. Their desire to share the story of the Foster House with guests is commendable, and I fully support their efforts. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Anyone else would like to speak in favor of this variance? I guess since you came late, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, please state your name and address for the...
My name is Susan Mitchell. I live at 191 East State Street. So I live in the neighborhood. I'm across the street and a few doors toward Stimson Avenue. I believe that if we allow the Kramers, especially Davis, to allow this proposal to take place, we will definitely, and I know this is why you are here, why we have this important group of zoning appeals, that we will definitely make the neighborhood more beautiful, and we will protect the historical integrity. People who have bed and breakfasts cannot get guests if the place isn't beautiful. And I have found I do a similar, although I live in Athens, I do similar work in another town, and you get really quality people, especially if the pricing is high, and which I hope it will be. I don't know what she plans to have her pricing. But you also get people like the Kramers, and there might be, in this case, we've got a young person who grew up here who might be able to move back to her hometown because she will have this business. And we might find other elderly people or young people who can make their house a showcase because of the income that they can get from Parents Weekend and other weekends where this town really needs good quality places for people to stay. I fear that if we don't allow this type of very small business to take place, we could lose the historic integrity of that block. And right now it is, if you drive from Stimson Avenue to Merkel, it's the historical integrity, a lot of the homes don't have it anymore. From Merkel up, we do. And if I know we are allowing bed and breakfasts on Stimson and a few other places. I think we will keep the historical integrity of the block and maybe some of the ones that are gone right now if we allow this. And I think, why not? I mean, one big reason why I think we should, because you can visit it in 6 months. If she makes proposals and doesn't live up to it, then we come back to this room and say, hey, this didn't happen. And it can always be taken back. But the way that the world is moving now, I'm afraid we will, the rest of East State Street could look like the first block, and I don't want that to happen. And I just took iron pipes out of my house, which was built in 1936. It was incredibly expensive. And many families would rather just buy a newer house, let the house go, and this will give people the resources to keep their houses beautiful.
there are many nice homes out there in that neighborhood.
Yes.
And so, do you think that this may open the gate for others want to come in here and have a bed and breakfast in the same R1 zone?
Well, again, they'd have to come to you, wouldn't they?
Yeah, but that's, then we have to.
Then it would be your job to decide whether they have the integrity of Davis to do so. And I think that's why you're here. That's why we have you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if it did, I mean, if it meant other homes not becoming run down, it might be a decision you want to say yes to, it might not.
So you would be comfortable if there are more that also may qualify.
I would be.
In the neighborhood, okay.
I would be.
All right, thanks.
And I truly believe it would keep East State Street beautiful, in my opinion.
Okay, any questions? No, you might be seated. Anyone else in favor of the variance? Anyone for a general commentary? Is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition? Please come to the podium, please.
Excuse me. My name's Jack Stauffer. I live at 69 Elmwood Place. I've read some or most of the supporting documents / story about the Foster House bed and breakfast. Wrong. No breakfast, no on-site management. This is not about the Kramers. It's not about 220 East State Street. This is about maintaining our R1 neighborhood. A few years back, this same area was reduced from an R2 to an R1, I believe to control density. A new hotel is coming to downtown Athens, maybe two if the Cornwells follow through. It is not government's business who and how many people build hotels, motels in any given town as long as they are in a permitted zone. If the market is out there for an additional hotel, someone will step forward and fill that market. I did not have time to research this fully, but when this came up a while back, it was discussed by council, I believe, anyway, a public forum. Since then, I believe it's correct that you voted down the last application by unanimous vote. In any event, it failed, and it should have. Again, did not have time to do all the homework, but it seems that this is allowed in certain zones or on certain main streets. R1 is our sacred area where a person or family can find and enjoy a peaceful environment. This is not about Mr. Kramer, Mrs. Kramer, young Mrs. Kramer, or 220 East State. This is about the people who bought their homes in the R1 zone because they were seeking and currently enjoying all the benefits that come with living in a quiet and peaceful environment and neighborhood. With transient people comes traffic, parking, noise, litter, and a much more active and possibly boisterous or rowdy bunch. That all is both possible and likely. Those of us who bought property also bought a set of property rights that should be maintained. People expect what they paid for and don't expect or deserve to have their rights, property rights, taken from them, especially in an R1 for the gain of $1. That is what all B zones were designed for, while R1 zones are for the peaceful, quiet enjoyment of our property, our homes. We all have to acknowledge that hotels or bed and breakfast will create a late night crowd headed home, some drunk, some noisy. That is not why I paid a hefty price for a quality location in an R1 zone. Also, aside from a taking of property rights, from all existing R1 residents, you would open a different can of worms, which include the following. You would be allowing people to sleep in homes, many older, with older infrastructure, where there is no fire protection, as they would have in any and all modern hotels. Handicap accessibility is another issue. Also, the city, even according to their own admission, has a code office that is currently understaffed and overworked. How would any enforcement be done? The appellant makes a good, professional presentation, but it's a presentation, and in spite of their intentions, any number of unfortunate circumstances and situations can happen. Also, once you let this happen one time, the floodgates may open. I know some people think this board sets a precedent, some people do not. But in any event, this may open the floodgates. That's not why I spent a lot of money for a nice house in an R1 neighborhood. I live on a nice street that's quiet and has as many on the Near East Side do. And more likely than not, this, because of its proximity to downtown, will be the most greatly affected neighborhood, driving down both quality of life and property values, as I believe no one wants to live next door to a hotel, whether it's large or small. As a side note or asterisk, there are more than likely, even at this time, people doing this and avoiding the system and the tax system. How and or who can control the taxes not being currently collected? It would not surprise me if you ask your own elected officials that they are aware of or suspicious of people that are avoiding the system at this time. This is not a permitted use and not a good idea. R1 is a sacred environment. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else would wish to speak in opposition? Please come to the podium.
My name is Judith Rue. I live at 218 East State, which is directly next door to the Kramer's home at 220. And I spoke with Davis Kramer. She asked me to come over and talk with her about 10 days ago, gave me the brochure that probably you have too, and really went through some things that she thought were important for me to know. I read that more carefully after I left, and I had some serious concerns. She asked me to write a letter of support, and I told her that I could not, nor could I come and support turning the house into a bed and breakfast. And to be totally upfront with her, I called her several days ago and spent about an hour on the phone going through, piece by piece, my concerns about this proposal and about its viability. During that conversation, some contradictions came up, which I'd like to just walk you through some issues that being next door, and we've been in our home for close to 40 years. I mean, we're really townies, if you will. But concerns that I have, because our house is only 6 years newer than the Kramer's home. So we are faced with constant upkeep too. But we decided way back we were going to maintain our home to the best of our ability. And we've done that. So in the proposal, it's certainly parking is an issue, because parking is an issue along the whole stretch of East State Street. Now, having someone come and mark the tires has cut down on some of the students parking there and leaving cars, which used to happen. But we still have parking congestion. We don't have a driveway, so we're forced to park on the street. That has its ups and downs, I'll tell you, but that's not what this is about. In the proposal, Davis says that this house will be used as a bed and breakfast only on the weekends. However, when I was concerned, and I certainly was, about the lack of supervision on the weekends, she also disclosed that her parents would only be living in the house until approximately December, when they intended to move to a newer home they've bought or an older home they've restored. So there would be basically no one in the house during the week unless it was rented too, which contradicted only renting it on the weekends. So now, is it rented during the week and the weekend and just cleaned but otherwise an empty house? That would be a real concern for us, because it's very difficult to supervise people coming and going from a house next to your property. Not that it's our job to supervise them, but if it's loud, who calls the police? Who calls the Kramers? We're the people who are most intimately faced with this. Now, certainly the fact that people will come and stay without supervision is a concern. Also, my concern too extends to safety. There's a pool in the backyard adjacent to the area that they want to add parking to. And that pool is accessible from basically 2 complete sides of the house. And even though they say in here that no one will be allowed to use the pool, there's no way to keep anyone from being able to walk back there, remove the pool cover, and be in the pool. The pool is not locked. It's not totally fenced off. It's a concern about safety, particularly if you're going to run a bed and breakfast. You don't want people drowning in the pool. And so we have safety concerns about that. We have concerns about the house not being occupied or not being supervised, or both. And while I really would like to be a good neighbor and go along with what is requested of me, my concerns are paramount in this. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you about those. Do you have any questions for me?
Well, since you're next door, and if this variance is denied, would you be having any concerns if this becomes a rental, maybe a residential, a family rental, or a student rental maybe?
That's sort of the implicit threat that if the bed and breakfast doesn't work, then it will be put on the market and sold to whomever. Of course, we don't want more rentals.
Yeah, okay.
Who does? But if that's the threat, then everybody has that threat. That instead of saying, yes, we want to sell it to a family and selling it, that they can sell it to someone who will make it a rental. And there are plenty of people in town. But I don't know that the threat, the implicit threat of that, is worth my saying, oh, that's fine, make it a bed and breakfast. So is it a catch-22? to some degree. There's also the possibility that someone would buy this beautiful home and want to live in it.
Any questions? Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else in opposition? Okay, the appellant, now you have a chance to come and rebuttal the discussion that went on.
I'm not sure where to begin with that. I guess because it's top of mind. I restored our pool this year for the first time in 12 years, maybe longer. It's not wide open. We are grandfathered in to where we don't have to have a fence directly around the pool, but there is a fence up there, and there is a pool cover that you can't open unless you have a certain tool. So it's not just wide open for anyone to walk in. We've also discussed it, if this goes through, that we'd put a gate up there as well. I think that my parents do have another property that they're working on. My younger brother is in hospitality. He works at the Hyatt in Columbus. We have a lot of discussions about this. Again, we've been talking about this for 10 years. So if this were a possibility of something that we could do, you know, our worlds change. I've talked about moving back to Athens. My brother has as well. He looks for really any excuse to come back. So the fact that we would have someone not living there, you can't leave a house like that just empty. It's too much maintenance, too many things break. It's a lot. So we're not abandoning this house by any means. It's actually the opposite, that, you know, we want to generate some type of revenue in order to restore it. There's, the list of, you know, just like anyone who owns a home has an older home, the list is a mile long of the things that we need to do to fix the property, to get it up to code. You know, I've spoken with several people about the electric and, you know, the fire concern. It is accessible, though, from the back of the house to Jack's point. And just to also clarify, there's not a threat from us about, if you don't go along with this, we're going to turn it into student housing. Anyone in any neighborhood can have a student rental. There's nothing really against it. It's three unrelated people. So anyone, even in the R1, even in the beautiful historic district that we're located, can do this. We don't want that. None of our neighbors want that. That's why I have so much support, that this is something that we're trying to do that beautifies our property, beautifies the area, and it's coming from a good place. It's not coming from, you know, trying to, you know, our livelihoods don't depend on making money from this. We're just trying to create something in Athens that matters and stands the test of time, and it's coming from a genuine, honest place. But we also want to have an open forum with all of our neighbors. That's been a big, you know, as I go around and I talk to everyone, I really press on that, you know, we have regular check-ins, and not in the sense of I'm leaning on my neighbors to call us when there's an issue. We've talked about different ways, different things we can put in place to make sure that we're checking in, you know, for those big weekends, homecoming, whatever, if we decide to rent those weekends, which is still debatable, but, you know, it is a historic home. We will have cameras and be able to check in that way.
We also have a property manager, or in discussion with someone who would be able to stop in and just check up on things. We're trying to do it the right way, and
No, I'm sorry, I don't want to be interrupting you, but I just thought maybe if you want to address the concerns of the two people who said this is an R1 zone, and one next door neighbor who was concerned about, if you could address those issues, because we have heard the rest of it before.
right. Okay, so I've addressed them
Okay.
in terms of the pool and the, the safety and those kinds of things.
Okay.
And we will. There will always there will be someone that lives there. Yeah.
Okay.
That's all.
Any comments?
I have a question. Yeah. Have you applied for historic place in Ohio with the commission that does that or anything like that? Making your house a historic.
Well, it's already in the historic district of Athens. I have looked into it in terms of making our house, like specifically, I guess, a landmark in that database. But I was kind of told by people I met with on city council that because it's in that historic district, it's already considered as a historic property. One other thing to note, when I originally was meeting with people to talk about this, I was kind of given two different directions in terms of you can go for a variance for an R1 or you can go for rezoning. We opted out of the rezoning because if we did sell the property later down the line, if it's zoned as commercial or in a B zone or something like that, you could rip down the house, put up apartments, put a parking lot in that side lot, and there's nothing we can do about it. So this seemed like the better way to go.
Okay, thank you. You may be seated. Also, Mr. Reschenbacher, some material just came in, which I will give them to you after the meeting to put in the records. There is a shared mission and what they want to accomplish. And there are 1, 2, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 13 people have signed in favor of this variance. There are, in addition, 3 letters that are in supporting the variance. So these will go in the records. Okay, folks, are we ready to make a motion, or do you want to discuss further?
Did you close?
We had the last B&B that we had in here the last time.
Yeah.
It came up that city council is the one who makes the laws.
Yes.
To get them changed.
Right.
And that was our discussion before about that. And
precisely.
It's a really tough decision.
Well, this is an R1 zone again. Like I said, we look at each case individually, but I'm afraid that we're going to just have more coming in. And we shouldn't be the body that could make that decision. As you said, I'd rather city council take care of that. Let's make a motion, and then we go through the findings in more detail. I'm sorry, did you have a question?
I just wondered if you close the floor to discussion or...
Oh, yeah. The discussion from the floor is closed, so
no, if you want
unless we ask you a question.
Comment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. So that you get to do the variance since you started.
I move to grant a variance to the property at 220 East State Street from Athens City Code 230401 to allow a bed and breakfast in an R1 zone where such use is not permitted, and from ACC 2310 Table B off-street parking requirements to allow a bed and breakfast with 2 parking spaces where 5 parking spaces are the minimum requirement.
Do we have a second? Okay,
So
second.
now I have a question about my own motion. So her plan to put in additional parking, that's just, right now, it's just a question of the 2 spaces?
Yeah.
Okay.
You could make it 3.
Oh, I don't know.
Then it comes to the closing of the second floor, and I don't know how that is done. So I think we should go stick with whatever we have at the time.
Okay.
They could always change it. That's my opinion. You still want a second? Okay. Going to the findings, exceptional circumstances. Is there any exceptional circumstances that apply to this piece of property?
I don't believe so.
I don't believe either, because this property can be utilized as a residential. It could be,
Right.
it is nothing.
It's a house.
Yeah, it's a house. It could be sold. It could be sold to an individual, or there are other options.
I would say that the exceptional circumstance is that this is a corridor of very beautiful homes, and we may all, or some of us may have a prejudice on behalf of going along with a plan that would preserve that. But to my mind, that is a prejudice. It's not really, I don't feel that it's really my place to.
Is that with respect to the property?
Yeah.
Because we know how people feel about things, but is this the property? This goes forever with this piece of property. Is there any exceptional circumstances, exceptional geography or structure that makes this different than the rest of the residential homes in that neighborhood?
No.
It's occupied by a very beautiful home.
Yeah. Practical difficulty and undue hardship. Are we, by rejecting the variance, create a practical difficulty and undue hardship?
No.
No. No.
Okay. Preservation of equal property rights. By granting this variance, we will be giving them more privilege than the neighbors. And of course, the neighbors can come apply for the same thing, but
not in that zone.
Is this minimum variance with respect to the R1 and also the parking situation? I would not call it minimum.
No.
Absence of detriment with two people who testified in here, and especially one next door neighbor. Apparently, it is some detriment to their neighborhood and not of a general nature. Okay, are we ready to vote? All in favor of this variance, please raise your hand. All opposed? I'm sorry, you don't have the variance. 5-0.
Well done.
Okay, let's say the last item on the agenda is disposition of minutes from July 10, 2018 minutes. Did you have a comment on the minutes of last, or was it someone else? Okay. You want to make a motion?
I move to approve the minutes of July 10th, 2018.
Do we have a second?
I was here.
We have a second. All in favor of approving the minutes of July 10, please raise your hand. Okay. And then you were not here. Yeah, okay. Well, the meeting is adjourned.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Good for you.
Okay, thanks.